Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. One of my favorite topics to cover is cycles. It's looking back into history and seeing patterns play out, whether there's war cycles, the rise and fall of civilizations, the rise and fall of currencies, and people that study these cycles are fascinating to me. So I'm sure you've seen my interviews with Martin Armstrong. He's a very famous cycles analyst. My guest today is right up there with him. It's Dr. Charles Nenner, who's also a very prestigious cycles analyst. And so we're going to be talking about what he's seeing. I've had him on before. He made some pretty strong claims about a few things. One, interest rates kind of keep going up. He thinks for 20 or 30 years, approaching 1980s levels. He sees a major correction coming in the stock market. He's seeing significant wars coming over the next, say, 3 to 5 years. And so I'm going to talk to him today and see where we're at in these different cycles, where the stock market is at, what he thinks happens with precious metals. That's a big thing to me. I'm a big fan of precious metals. I want to understand where's he seeing that fit in. So it might be a little bit tricky or difficult, you could say, for some folks because his cycles don't predict some kumbaya, everything's going to be fantastic, and Nassar Jassar is coming, and we're all going to be really rich. I mean, there's difficult times coming, and his cycles affirm that, and almost everything that I've come to believe in my own research and talking to people says the same thing. So, but the key is that I want to be honest. I want to know what's really happening. I want you to know what's really happening. So I enjoy guests like him that he's not coming on here to make you feel good. He's coming on here to give you an honest assessment of where we're at in history. So folks, please enjoy the interview with Dr. Charles Nenner. Dr. Nenner, it is an honor to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome.
So I think that so much of what happens in the world right now is driven by the economy. And whether you're looking at wars, the rise and fall of countries, empires throughout history, so much has been driven by the economics, but also the cycles of economics and the cycles of wars. And so I really enjoy speaking to people like yourself or Martin Armstrong or different folks that understand cycles and study them and help us interpret where we are and where we're going. And I've seen it. I've been following your work, and it's very, very accurate in saying, okay, here's where we are, and here's what comes next. And so, when you're looking right now, and you're looking at the stock market, the different markets, there's a sense of like, oh wow, things are doing really well, but I feel my gut tells me that we're on the edge of something, and that it's the feeling that we have of everything going really well is very shaky at best. So I want to see, what is your perception of just where the world economy is, where the American economy, where the stock market, where these things are right now, and where you think they're headed?
Well, the feeling is things are going well has to do with the cycles. They're still up, but they look toppy. I think I once gave you an example of if we both own IBM and we bought it at 100 and it goes to 150, and IBM comes out with a great number, the stock goes up, and the Wall Street Journal will write, IBM had such a great number, people poured in to buy IBM. And if the same situation arises, we still bought it at 100, now it's 150, and now IBM came out with the same good numbers, and now it sells off. So the Wall Street Journal will say people don't think IBM will do better next year, so people took profit. What does it tell us? It tells us that even if you know the facts, but you don't know the interpretation of the facts, it's not going to help you. So even if you look at all kinds of stocks in the market, what the value is and the cash flow, whatever, you don't know what the interpretation of the market is. The same thing if the Fed comes out, you don't know what people expected exactly, so you don't know if it's going to influence or not. So it continues to be the situation that it's very hard for people to understand, first of all, how things happened in the past and how they will go in the future. So what you say is totally correct, but it's not only a feeling, because we both know that the GDP is turning down right now. And I just saw Sunday, I showed my cycles on the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index, which means is in a couple of weeks, the inflation will pick up again. I'm always surprised that the Fed has to go from months to months. They don't have the right tools. I mean, it's very clear what's going on and what's going to happen. So that's an interesting situation. Then the war cycles are still up. Well, you've seen it explodes everywhere in the world. And it could still lead to a very big war in the nearby future. And on the stock market, we are making a very, very long-term top. Not yet, but it's coming. And I mean a top like the 1929 top. That's what we're talking about. That doesn't only has to do with the feeling. If you look at the numbers, then I don't base my stuff so much on fundamentals. That in a few years, that 50% of GDP goes away for only paying the interest on what the United States earns, and every child knows this is going to collapse. But because of political plays, we continue as long as we can because the people in charge say, well, not under my watch. Let's take out later. I go out with a good name. Nothing happened, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So that's what we're dealing with. And thank God we have the cycles and targets so we can pinpoint when things are going to explode.
So, with you saying that the stock market, as an example, is at a very long top, similar to 29, my understanding of what you're
Well,
saying is, go ahead.
the different ideas. One is the cycles that topped in 1929, which a lot of cycles topped together. Actually, in 27, they top again for the first time since 100 years.
I see.
Um, so the second thing is that stock market, now we talk fundamentals, simple fundamentals, ABC. Stocks are overvalued and are expensive, and the GDP is going down. So we have something that's called the Buffett indicator. Mr. Buffett produced that years ago, and it looks like what the total capitalization is of stocks compared to GDP, and it's very extreme. It's extreme, extreme, extreme. So in the same time, we're throwing around money for ideas that, for me as a European, are totally unclear. Billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, based on a fairy tale that Mr. Putin likes to take over Europe, which obviously is not, because he's not going to fight the whole NATO. And it's nobody makes any good decisions. I don't even know who's in charge in the United States. But you need a strong person and strong government in order to fix these problems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, which is why I think what's happening heading into this presidential election is going to be very, very significant, which we'll get to in that. And so, looking at the stocks kind of peaking, actually, I'll pull up just as one example, a chart here that I did find that this might be something that illustrates a little bit what you're saying. This is only goes up to say 2020. This is showing the market cap and then the national GDP, right? Showing how the market cap, you can see actually after about 2012 or so, it's going higher and higher. Now, obviously, it doesn't show what's happened since COVID, but you're saying that the GDP is decreasing and the market cap is going up. So, am I right in understanding that this is a little bit of a warning sign, right? That when the money in the stock market starts to really outpace the actual GDP of a nation. Is that an accurate understanding?
Well, this discussion I have a lot of people who are new in the stock market hear from the broker that the markets go up like on the average 8 or 9%. That's true for the last 100 years on the average. So let's take, if you can bring back the chart, let's look at the red line. Let's say the red line is the average, right? It goes around the average. Now, in order to end up in the average, you see how much this market has to come down. It has to come down 2,000 points below the red average in order to get back to the average. So the whole fantasy is that it goes up 8-9%. Yeah, but if it's 70-80% above the angle of 9%, it has to go down 70-80% below the angle in order to go to the average again. So this is very nice visualization of what you see here, that everything goes around the red line. And now it's so much above the red line. So how do I ever get back to the red line, the average? Only by selling off much below the red line.
I see. So it's almost like you have the red line, which is the national GDP, and it you see it goes above and below, but it always comes back. It always finds its center. But the farther it goes up, maybe we see like, oh, the stock market's going up, 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 and now GDP is going down. They're still wed together in some form. So eventually that stock market has to come down and match, but it doesn't come down and stop at the GDP. It goes down far below the GDP, and then it comes back
Right.
up and it starts to balance out, and that's what creates that equilibrium. So, based on this and your other cycles information, I mean, do you think that we're heading for a pretty significant correction of these exact numbers that we're looking at?
Well, not yet. We still have some time, but we're getting there. We just have to watch the cycles and the price targets and be ready for it.
So, what I know it's not always easy to tell, but based upon the cycles, what kind of timeline? Because you and I have talked before. We talked a lot about the markets and interest rates and these various subjects, which I think are really important to really most people who care about what's happening in this country. So, with regards to stock market, for instance, it's doing really well right now. But as we're talking about it, it's at that long top, and what comes after the top is the heading towards the bottom. So, how much longer do you think that it can sustain this steadiness at the top before it comes down? And what does that come down look like, in your opinion?
I have a lot of studies on that on my website. The best thing is to see the charts and what we send out. As you know, it's charlesnenner.com. Uh, People can go there for 30 days without signing up any credit card or whatever, and then they can see exactly how we calculate it. Because I always think to know how we calculate it is more important than the end result. Because if you're off by a month or by 2 months, if you believe the way we calculate is correct, then you don't care if it's delayed by a month or two.
I see. And so, what do you think that correction looks like when it does arise? Are we talking about 30%, 50%, 70%?
Well, it depends on how long it takes.
Mm,
The markets didn't crash exactly in 1929. It started already in 27. Came down, came up, came down, and then you had this terrible a few days in 1929. So that's how it goes. If for people who know the Elliott wave, it goes down in 5 waves. You go down in wave one, then you stop a little bit. Then people are used to buy the dips, are going to buy the dips. Then it goes up in a wave two, and then it starts going down in wave three when people are getting afraid of selling. And you can calculate with Fibonacci numbers how low you go. Also, my system that doesn't use the Fibonacci numbers has a different system that looks at momentum that says if I go down, let's say 15% on the first wave, then I can calculate how low we go until the whole thing is over.
I see. I see.
But I just always like to bring up the fact that this will work if you don't believe things move at random. If you think things move at random, you will never look for these things to find. Now, with AI, the intelligence now, they're not catching up because they're still based on the wrong assumption that first something happens, what the computer is going to look for, and then we know the end result. And my system for 40, I don't know, 35 years is based on the opposite, what learning quantum physics, that the cause and result are the other way around. There's first the result and then the cause, which the mathematic people, experts say, this is what follows when we will calculate it. But in philosophy, we can't understand how this works. So this is how it works. You have first the end result and then the cause. So for instance, when we're in zero stocks before the virus broke out, I had no clue, but I said something is going to happen over here. Could be anything. And this is often what I talk about. A lot of people heard about the black swan theory, that the gentleman who wrote that, and I always forget his name, wrote that there are going to be some situations you cannot expect before they happen. So you have whole groups of intelligence that looks for what's going to happen, and we only look when it's going to happen. I don't care why it's going to happen. You understand? So it's a total different attitude that we don't deal something happens and then you have the end result. We know what the end result is. And something, it could be a war, could be another virus, could be a government going on, who knows what it is. So we don't spend too much time on figuring that out, but the end result is what counts.
That makes sense in the way that I can understand it. Now, what are your thoughts on precious metals? I was listening to a recent interview with Greg Hunter at USA Watchdog, and you're quite bullish on precious metals. And I'll pull up that chart. So this is just showing gold over the past 5 years. It's up a little over 80%. It's really been. It seems like the new normal it's hit these days is right above 2,000, right? 2,200, 2,300. What do you see as we're looking at the GDP, the stock market capitalization, where do you see precious metals fitting in? And as these corrections take place, how do you see that affecting the value of precious metals, primarily gold and silver? So, a lot of folks are not a big fan of all fruits and veggies. Some taste great, but many don't. And you have to admit, when you're in the produce section, all those vibrant colors of fruits and veggies look so good. Balance of Nature explains that all those colors you see in the produce section equals nutritional variety. Different colors signify different key nutrients. So if you only eat your favorite one or two veggies, you're missing a whole world of vital nutrients. And that's why you should eat a big variety of fruits and veggies. Well, I decided it was time to start taking Balance of Nature's fruit and veggie supplements each day. And get this, some Balance of Nature customers say the fruit and veggie capsules taste so good, you can actually chew them. So I gave Balance of Nature a try, and I'm glad I did. Are you ready? So whether you order online or call them direct, you must use a promo code Seth to get this special offer of 35% off and free shipping on your first order. As a preferred customer, call them at 800-246-8751 and use discount code Seth, or order online at balanceofnature.com. Use discount code Seth to get 35% off and free shipping on your first order as a preferred customer.
Well, we had a long-term upside price target around 2,500, and I think on a June contract we hit 2490 or so, something like that. Now it's going to be difficult to trade higher. In the end, we're going higher, but again, by the time that all the media will say, "Oh, watch gold is going up," then usually it's too late. It's also the same situation. Once an asset starts going up, nobody pays attention, and when it's almost at the top, then suddenly the media and the pundits pick up, and then every small investor gets in, and then it's already too late. So right now it's a bit late. To be long. You have to take a look at our cycles. You've got weekly and monthly cycles, and I tell you exactly when the next low is and what price the next low is, and then you can go in and play the upside again.
And so, what do you see? Because you mentioned being quite bullish on metals with Greg. What do you see over the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Well, I remember then the gold was around 2,000 and it went to 2,500. I see it going higher the next couple of years. Why do I always tell people to go and look at the website? Because the following thing can happen. If I say it goes high the next couple of years, then you have the so-called long-term investors who buy gold. Then it goes down $100. Doesn't matter, it goes up long-term. But then it goes down $300, and now they don't sleep anymore. And when it's down $400, they sell out, and then it starts going up, but they miss the whole move. So emotionally, it's difficult to be there for the long term because it sounds good in theory, but try to do it and not, missing out on sleep is difficult. So that's why I hate to say these things long term, because people might invest long term, but if it goes against them and they don't watch my cycles, then we knew it, but they don't know it. So they wait till it comes down, and then in a panic, they sell out.
It's funny because I talk to folks and I have that same experience. Like, if I buy silver, say I think I bought some silver at, $23, and say silver's down to $19, people I know, they're freaking out and saying, "Gosh, I've already lost money. I've lost money." And for me, it's like, no, like you just let it sit there, and eventually it's gonna be okay. Whereas now it's approaching $30, but me personally, I'm not rushing to sell it because for me, I'm looking at it as very long term. It's like it's the insurance policy. It's the safety for me.
Yeah, but that's why our system takes out actually emotions, because you don't have to wait till it goes to $19. We could tell you it goes to $19 and then you buy. So usually you're not on the wrong side of the market.
It makes sense. So we talked earlier briefly about the presidential election. Now you're in, is it Netherlands? Am I correct? That's where you're
Right.
in?
I'm now sitting in Miami, but I'm from the Netherlands.
Okay. And so from the outside looking in and looking at the economics and how that affects geopolitics, war cycles, et cetera, what do you see playing out in the election and this presidential election? I mean, we just saw recently in New Jersey, there's close to 100,000 people turning up for a Trump rally, which is this is unprecedented, just almost in American history. And we're months and months and months away from the actual election. It just seems like every time they slap him with another lawsuit, with more deliberation, more corrupt judges, that the American people react with more and more support. So, how do you see things playing out this November?
I think a lot can happen. What I'm very worried about is terrorists coming to the southern border,
Yeah, me too.
and you don't hear how many of those people are. Let's say if you reach, for instance, the Chinese don't leave China without being approved by the Communist Party. So where does 30, 40,000 Chinese every time come from? And if you would be an enemy of the United States, wouldn't you send your people in? Maybe not now, but just in case. We're all situated already where we have to be. So I can't even say what I think about this election. There are things going on that, not that Europe is such a sound place politically, but what's going on in the United States, nobody can explain it to me. It's total. I don't even know what to say. Um, I'm pretty sure that Trump is going to win. The problem is, if you're pro-Trump, the Democrats put so many people in key places that what can he do? I watch sometimes the Congress, because there's some favorites of mine that have to investigate the people that's going to be the new judges. And if you see the quality of the new judges and how they lie and how they cheat, it's just amazing. So I think we got to a situation where nobody takes the United States seriously anymore internationally. The border is filled with terrorists. The budget deficit is going to blow up. I don't even know, and the market's going to crash. I don't even know if it's nice for Trump to be a president, because they're going to say it's your fault.
Yeah, you're right.
Give you an example about cycles. For instance, Carter. Now the discussion is Biden worse than Carter or not? That's what they bring up. So Carter had the cycles against him, even when he tried to get you're probably too young, maybe you're not, the hostages out of Iran. They had the collusion of the helicopters. And then who came? Then they voted for Reagan. Now, Reagan was lucky because all the cycles turned up. That's why they voted for somebody like Reagan, because the atmosphere became positive. So then they were going to vote for somebody who's positive. So he couldn't do anything wrong. And I'm afraid that when Trump is going to be elected, or the next time Biden, whoever's going to be, cannot do anything right because of the cycles. It's not their fault. I mean, what can you do?
It's almost like there's a ship that's set on course, and it's going to hit a giant iceberg, and you can't change that. And so one captain, he's like, okay, I'm done. It's been nice sailing. And the new captain taking the wheel is the one who actually is going to be the captain when the ship hits the iceberg, but they can't change it. So Trump does get in. What you're saying, and it makes sense, regardless of what he does, the cycles are saying that those 4 years are going to be really, really
Very
terrible,
difficult.
right? Very difficult for the United States.
Yeah, yeah. So to see that Trump is going to solve it, I think he will do better. I'm not a voter, so I say that as a European. By the way, I had this idea that nobody came up with. So I understand that the Democrats don't think that you should show an ID when you vote. So if I would be a Republican, I would call on all the tourists that like Trump to come over from China, Europe, and vote. How
That's a
come they
good
don't do
point.
that?
That's a
Bring
good
in
point.
billions of people. They're going to vote for Trump. Whoever wants to just, maximally buy your ticket, come and vote.
That's true.
But that's how crazy. But that's how crazy it is.
That's true. Make it like a giant international holiday. It's like the patriotism of America holiday, and all of the patriots from around the world. They all come for that weekend in America, and it's going to be we'll have big celebration, and everyone goes and votes. And we'll have
Probably I'm missing something, right? Is that possible or not?
I don't know the specifics of it, but I don't see how it's any different than an illegal
Right.
coming across and voting in the election. I mean, to me, that they're one and the same.
So what if China would send over 50 million people, give them tickets, and they're going to vote over here?
Yeah, that could be pretty
Nobody ever
crazy.
came up with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, getting into overall population and demographics. So, we've talked before about the war cycles, and oftentimes, as I understand it, the war cycles and the economic cycles they are very, very closely intertwined. And we've talked before about what you're seeing in the cycles is a pretty significant, even into the billions, number of people perishing during upcoming wars that your cycles are showing you. So, can you give us an update and explain and give us little details on what you're seeing within the war cycles?
Well, I can tell you where the number came from. I was kind of forced to say that. I didn't want to say it. I like people still to have sleep nicely. If you take a chart of General Motors and um, it goes up and down, up and down. Now the cycles will show you when the next up move is. So the cycles will show you when the next cycle on the war goes up again. But on the left side of such a chart, you have the prices. And you can calculate from the last up move where the next up move is going to be. So the scary thing is if you calculate the First and Second World War, how many victims there were, and you project it in the future, you come to a huge amount of people. That's how we do it. So all these things can be shown how to calculate. It's not that I just make up something. You can always say it will not work, the systematic, but for now everything works very nicely. So we have to into consideration that maybe if it's going to be a nuclear war, the next who knows where it's going to end.
And what do you see as the timeline for this kind of war?
Well, we still have with this war cycle, we still have another 6, 7, 8 years to go. If we make it through those 8 years, then we have some peace and quiet for the moment. The same thing as if you watch already USA Watchdog, for 10 years ago, I talked about the social unrest in the United States because the 60-year cycle. So the change of the century, La Nouvelle Epoque at 1900 was a very time of a lot extremes. And then in 1960, in the 60s, and now 60 years later. So even the people who think that they manifest something and they have the free choice to protest, it's not a free choice, it's the cycles. And that's going to be over in a couple of years. So let's see how much damage the country can handle, but it's not going to go on forever.
And that's an important question. Well, there's two parts to that. Is that one is what I gather from what you're saying is that we still have both economically, in terms of finances, et cetera, but also in terms of war, there's still a window for us. It's not like you're saying the market's going to crash next week and that we're going to get bombed by Russia in 2 weeks. I mean, what you're seeing in this, though it's frightening, to me it still gives relief that there is some time. There is some time for us to prepare to take our finances, our assets seriously, to take our living situation, our food supplies. We do have some window of time to prepare for this turmoil. Is that correct?
Right, and I just mentioned I mentioned it to my wife a couple of weeks ago. Most people don't know that they think to save in treasury bills, but in the 30s, it took many years, I think almost 8, 9 years, for the government to pay back the treasury bills. And then the money was so much devaluated, so you didn't get paid anything. So you really have to study the subject. This is not how we make money. I always say I'm a Dutch person. We don't want to lose money. Americans always says, how do you make money? We say, how do we lose? Don't we lose money? And watch the research a little bit. So this is a time that you have to try to be safe. And it's no joke. It's not a matter of making a couple of percentage up or down. It's really survival.
And so and that's a good point, actually. I think that, again, going back to that discussion I've had with people on silver, they say, oh, it's down, $2 or $3. And for me, I'm looking at the long term of how do I not have this asset disappear, right? I'm not saying how do I take this money and gamble and make a bunch more money. I'm saying how do I make sure that I'm preserving this aspect of my overall net worth? And it's very different. I think there's a lot of people, especially here in America, that we have our fast food, we have Amazon next day delivery, we want everything happening very quickly. It's not like our grandparents that they were planning for 5 years out when they're canning food, they're growing food. It's just part of the lifestyle that they're taking care of themselves 5 years ago. They're taking care of their next generation, and we don't seem to be doing that anymore, which I think is not good. I think it's actually going to make this upcoming difficulty far more difficult for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Well, how about governments confiscating the silver and gold that you have? That would not be the first time. It's just that even Rome, one of the reasons Rome went under because they confiscated the gold and silver. So you have to know where to put your silver. We work with all the big investors, so we have all the contacts also overseas. So you know where to send it and how to keep it. You cannot rely on anything at the moment, especially if they bring in the digital dollar. Can you imagine the digital dollar? So they control everything you do. So let's say you want to go on vacation to Spain. Says, no, you went last year on vacation and it's too bad to the climate. You're not allowed to buy a plane ticket. You cannot go on vacation. Who knows what's going to happen? I think most of the people have no idea how to go around that. So there's a lot to be studied.
Do you think that the central bank digital currency, which we've talked about a lot on this show before, do you think that will have success? Do you think they'll actually, especially in a place like America where there is so much independence and resistance to the system, do you think that they'll be able to successfully roll out a CBDC here and get rid of privately owned assets and cash, et cetera?
Well, two things. First of all, if you see what happens in the port these days, I don't know what you can trust anymore. Who knows what they can do? Look what happened with the virus. Look, if I don't even know what you are in the army, if you what kind of sexuality, but we're not fighting the enemy. We're trying to figure out how to address yourself, where the gender toilets are, whatever. And the second thing is, I think the dollar is almost finished because the other countries, the BRIC countries, are getting ready to do the anti-dollar. So the whole thing is not like we used to. It's not going to be the dollar. So if that's the case, they cannot print dollars anymore because it's not the reserve currency. Now, if you ask any economist what will happen when the dollar is not the reserve currency anymore, there's no United States anymore. Because it's all loans and credit. And it's interesting. I saw this in 2007-8 during the crisis. People that were thought to be multimillionaires were down to zero because everything was a lease against this and a loan against that, and nothing is real. So I'm more worried about what happens to the dollar than the digital dollar. Probably will be the last thing that kicks the dollar out, making a digital dollar. But the BRIC countries will come next year, and I don't know what's going to happen with this deficit and the printing of the money. It's not going to continue.
So you think that the dollar itself is nearing its end?
Right. There's a lot of studies about, I'm Dutch, so we ruled the seas in 1700, and the guilder was the reserve currency, and then was taken over by Britain. But then the pound finished to be the reserve currency, and there was a dollar, and every society comes to an end. So probably the Chinese currency is going to be the next one. Should we change ourselves into Chinese? Not so simple, but definitely what you see based on the cycles is that the East, meaning India, Singapore, Australia, China, Vietnam, is where the economic expansion is going to be. Europe is going to stay in the middle, and the United States going down. And that's normal every 200, 250 years. That's how these continents and society change their place.
So that's a very important cycle to look at this with. It's not just about the stock market or what's happening with this particular item. The bigger picture of the global cycles and the rise of the East, the fall of the West, the rise of the West, the fall of the East, and so that's what you're seeing. It's a lot of folks I've talked to have said very similar things. Is that basically that the reign of United States being the number one world superpower, the leader, the reserve currency, the top dog, that we're at the end of that, and that
Right.
the East, especially these BRICS nations, with centered on a lot of the Asian countries, that they are now like it's almost like we've gotten. Well, I had an old history teacher who'd say you get fat, happy, and stupid. That America as a country has gotten fat, happy, and stupid, and that makes it ripe for the enemies to come in, and basically that we're
and of course the cycle is always 250 years if you check it out. All these countries, the Dutch, the English, the Japanese ones, and now the United States. It's always like, I don't know why exactly that we still don't know, 250 years, which if you go back to the Civil Wars, it's about 250 years is over. So now we have no problems. The only problem I have is which toilet I'm going to choose. I mean, it's funny, but I mean, other people have to make a living. So how can you outperform them? You cannot. And when Hillary Clinton doesn't win, we have to send dogs to comfort the students because they can't handle it. But this is a normal way that it goes. Our grandfathers had to work hard, and then the next generation went to college, and now it's trust babies or whatever you have. They have no clue what's going on, and they don't contribute much to society, and that's always how it goes.
It's the fourth turning.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Nenner, it's been great speaking with you. Before we sign off, I want to pull up your website one more time, charlesnenner.com. As you mentioned, no credit card required, anything like that. There's a free trial, 30 days to access your information. I've been following you for some time, and I find you to be consistently very accurate. You're not sensational. You don't make bold claims that don't come true. You're very careful with your words, but what you say carries a lot of weight to it. And so I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you giving myself and our audience the time. And thank you again for being here.
You're welcome. We'll see you again.
All right. Take care. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I've now got a very short, maybe 20-minute or so interview with my good friend, Dr. Kirk Elliott, on some pretty important updates on what's happening with silver, especially as it relates to the military-industrial complex and this currency and economic war between America and the Western central banks and BRICS nations and China, Russia, et cetera. So, folks, please enjoy. Kirk, great to have you on as usual. I know you've got a lot of big news items for us, so I'll just let you start where you want to start at.
Well, it's great to be with you again. And, we've been talking about silver for quite some time. And a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago on the show, we had talked about how China made this official announcement to its citizens, hey, stop buying gold and let's start buying silver. So when you think about it, over 1 billion people, even if they just bought 1 ounce of silver, that would be 50% more than the entire global mining production of silver coming out of the mines, just from that country. However, they don't need that much because India has already committed to 66% of all the 2024 production. So you're only talking about like 34% of the entire. I mean, you start to think of this number and it's like, oh my word, silver's gonna run out, right? So this is why China actually encouraged the citizens to buy it, because what's going to happen? They're going to toast the Western banks. So the Western banks like London, New York, everything, in the West, they have right now, if you look at the Commitment of Traders report, over 568 million ounces of silver. So it shows the number of short contracts by commercial. There's that's not the total number of ounces. That's the number of contracts. There's thousands of ounces per contract. So that's 568 million ounces when you do the math of silver in short positions. Okay. So what is this? What does that mean? Right.
Yeah,
so that means
translate that for me.
Yeah. These criminal banksters who did naked short positions, which means they can actually sell short something that they don't own. Well, it's like illegal for other people to do, but they can do it because they're big, huge international money center banks. So why would they do that? So number one, they have so many short positions because the Friday before the drones flew from Iran into Israel and the Iron Dome blew down these 300 drones, these paper aircraft almost. It's like, okay, goofy. But the day before that, they issued 1.2 billion ounces of short positions in silver. It's like, what? 1.2 billion. Now there's 568 million. So they got rid of about half of their short positions in the last few weeks. So it's like, why would they do that? Why in the world would they do that? Well, they knew that they had to issue these new short positions, generate cash to get rid of some of the old ones because they had so many shorts that when prices go up, they lose money hand over fist. So what are they expecting? By that tune, going from 1.2 billion to 600 million, they think silver is going to go through the roof, right? So what did China do? China actually, this is why they probably did that, had to pay some of those off, but there's still almost 569 million ounces of silver short. So this morning, before we're recording this, silver went up like 20 cents. So when prices go up, you lose money hand over fist if you're shorted because it's leveraged losses. So as silver continues to go up, China's expecting to destroy the Western banks. So what else is going to cause silver to go up outside of short covering that we're going to see a lot of? I mean, we could see this starting this week or anytime probably over the next 90 days, the way that short positions work. So it's like, we could be actually in the ballpark to see silver absolutely soar before the fall. I mean, this is really amazing, right? And before the election, right? When this is going to show that things are falling apart. So what else is causing demand to go through the roof? War, right? We're in a war economy, according to Martin Armstrong, which you've interviewed before. And so, and he's a brilliant forecaster. I mean, absolutely stinking brilliant. But so in a war economy, you need missiles, you need torpedoes. Well, there's this article that came from silverwars.org, great research institution if you're looking for things on silver. So silver use in 7 torpedoes comes to 34 kilograms of silver. So in each torpedo, there's about 11 or missile, there's about 11,000 ounces of silver per missile, right? It's like, oh my word. So you think of how many of these things are shot off in a war. That's really expensive, Seth, like really expensive. The Department of Defense is the largest purchaser of silver on the planet. Then comes like aerospace and then electronics and then, solar and then fuel cell technology and all that. But the DoD is the largest purchaser of silver on the planet. So think of all of these missiles shooting off, all these torpedoes going off with 11,000 ounces of silver in them. That's crazy to me how much silver is just going away that you can't reclaim. It's not coming back, right? So again, higher prices are coming in silver. What's another reason that gold and silver prices are going to go higher? Well, we've got the emergence of central banks coming our way, right? So this article is actually quite, if it weren't so scary, it would be funny. Just like when we saw a couple weeks ago, Jared Bernstein trying to explain the printing of money. I mean, what a bumbling buffoon, right? And he's the one speaking into Biden's ear about the economy. Well, listen to Harari, World Economic Forum, Dr. Evil Science guy, right? So what is he saying about what's coming next and the printing of money and inflation? Well, let's just watch this video and listen because I'll explain it after. It's only about a minute long, but it's worth the watch.
Okay.
When I look at Bitcoin as a historian, I don't like it because this is a money built on distrust. The central idea of Bitcoin is basically electronic gold, that we don't trust the banks, the governments, so we don't want to give them the ability to create as much money as they like, so we create this Bitcoin. It's a currency of distrust. I do think that the future belongs to electronic money, but what we've seen over the last centuries is that it's actually a good idea to give banks and governments the ability to create more and more money in order to build more trust within society. So I'm not sure what money would look like in 20 years or 30 years, but I hope it will be a currency of greater trust and not a currency of distrust.
So how funny is that his solution to helping us trust the government more is to give the government even more ability to print unlimited money. This guy's a genius. He's great, right?
I mean, isn't that just downright stupid? Okay, so here's Okay, so here's what I think that he's saying.
Folks, at the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred: free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. Yet, in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations crucial to our financial independence and security. This is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This free report highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't even touch, and listeners can get it completely free. So text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, then act now. So text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment does not think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. So folks, today, text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy.
So he's right in the first part of it. Bitcoin is a currency of distrust of the government, right? So is gold. So when you look at those two, gold and cryptocurrencies, or precious metals in general, gold, silver, or cryptocurrencies, have the same fundamental reasons why people want them. Number one, they want privacy. Cryptocurrency, decentralized blockchain cryptocurrency is private. So are tangible assets like gold and silver in their physical form. And people who invest in those want growth. Well, you get growth in cryptocurrency, you get growth in gold or silver. So the foundational issues of crypto and precious metals, I think, are the same. Now, the tool to get to that point is different. Cryptocurrencies are digital, gold and silver are physical. So to me, here's where the major disconnect comes in, is why you wouldn't want cryptos, because with the flip of a switch, they can cut you off. It's like, no, they can't do that, Kirk. It's decentralized blockchain. It's private. How do you own your Bitcoin? Through a wallet, a centralized wallet or a decentralized wallet. Like Russia, for example, if you had an IP address that was in Russia, or you even had a Russian surname, Coinbase cut you off. You couldn't actually access your Bitcoin because your coin wallet company that actually stores all of it wouldn't let you, right? So to me, digital is digital. It's still not safe. But what Harari is talking about here is, well, we don't want that. We don't want something that's built on the basis of distrust in the government. So how about this? How about we just let governments print as much money as they want to build trust? It's like, how in the world does that make any sense? Well, here's what I think he's thinking. If you print money without discretion, you're going to have money for handouts. You're going to have money for entitlements. You're going to have money for universal or basic income, right? Guaranteed income to everybody. You're going to have money to fund stupid stuff like what Biden just did in giving home buyers a $400 credit on their mortgage payments every month. It's like, what? They're just throwing money at people like willy-nilly to get their votes. So this is how you build trust in the government with unlimited printing of money, is you're basically buying their votes. You're not buying trust, you're buying your votes, right? So there's a difference there. But I think that's what he's saying, is if you give people something, they're going to trust you, right? Well, no, they won't. They're still going to have a distrust of the government. They're just going to realize we're weaseling our way out of some free money out of the government, and who knows who it's costing. It's going to cost all of us is what it's going to cost. So I just think that that's a very telling statement of what's coming next, because obviously Harari very deeply ingrained in the globalist movement and the World Economic Forum and central bank digital currency. And, we are all worthless eaters. It's like, what in the world? This guy is evil. Right. But so this is what's coming is he said digital currency is coming, and that's not a bad thing. So preconditioning people for central bank digital currency, centralized money that you can trust. I'm starting to sound like a used car salesman, but you know what, Seth? You can trust it because the government's going to give it to you. And so that should be a reason why you don't want to trust it, right? So here's what's starting to happen, which I absolutely love. Absolutely love these next couple of stories. So Nebraska, one of now 13 states that is basically just passed legislation to make income taxation on the sale of precious metals not legal, right? So here's where it's income taxes on the sale of gold and silver is not lawful. So they still have to pay federal income taxes like capital gains when you sell gold or silver, but no more state taxes. So they're one of, a handful of states that are now going down that road. The rationale behind it is, this is in the Constitution, what the founding fathers envisioned, actually legal money. And you don't tax money. If I were to give you $20 and you were to give me $20, we're not taxing those transactions. It's just the movement of currency, right? So in their mind, gold and silver is actually a true legitimate currency. Moving in the right direction right now. State legislation that says no taxation on the sale of physical gold and silver because it's actually currency. Now, this is going one step further to the federal level. So Representative Mooney from West Virginia has legislation. He's introducing a bill to end federal taxation on gold and silver. Federal taxation. That's no more income tax, no more capital gains tax on it, right? Because it's currency. So I don't know if that's going to pass, but the fact that people are thinking about it, that congressmen and women are floating bills to get this stuff done, is telling us that we are moving closer and closer and closer to a new currency that politicians that are in the know don't like what's coming. And I think they know that there's going to be state chartered banks backed by gold. They know that the BRICS nations are wanting to start their own central bank, a native central bank to their currency. So forget the yuan, forget the rupee, forget the ruble, right? Forget the dinar. All these countries that are part of BRICS they just now want a central BRICS central bank. Let's call it their currency, the brick. I don't know what it's going to be called, but let's just say it's called the brick. Well, they want the brick backed by gold, right? So, how are they doing it? They're doing it sneakily right now, with China having over 30,000 tons of gold, Russia having 1,000 tons, India having 600 tons. Oof. And now that they're genius plans by some Russian economists that are doing something different to get rid of the petrodollar. So their oil is, when you trade it back and forth internationally, it's traded in the US dollar. Then they went one step further and said, hey, we're going to actually trade in our own currencies and get rid of the petrodollar to destroy the petrodollar, right? Well, this Russian economist just went one step further. The proposal is we're going to peg 1 barrel of oil to 1 gram of gold. So it's like, Now, Biden actually eliminated our strategic oil reserve, right? So it's got to get replenished. By law, it has to be replenished, right? So as of January, though, the BRICS nations now have Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Russia, all these big, massive oil producers. So they're all in cahoots with each other. So if you now peg 1 gram of gold to a barrel of oil, that's actually systematically dismantles the US dollar. But what else could they do? So an analyst with Credit Suisse came back I think his name is Zoltan or something like that. But he came back and said, this actually has pretty thoughtful legs to this idea, because all you have to do if you want to destroy the West and bump up the BRICS nations is change the peg. change the peg to 1 gram of gold equals 2 barrels of oil. That would put gold at $3,600 an ounce. And who owns over 32,000 tons of gold? The BRICS nations. So by doing that, by changing how oil is traded, not in terms of the petrodollar, not even in terms of their own currency anymore, but in terms of being pegged to 1 gram of gold, this could actually completely destroy the US dollar and completely bring the BRICS nations to this massive amounts of wealth when they own 32,000 tons of gold collectively amongst those countries. And all they have to do is change the peg. If anybody wants, I'm going to say that this policy expands outside of just Russia to any of the BRICS nations, right? So OPEC, basically, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, all these countries that are now part of this BRICS consortium, if they've got oil, their oil pegged to 1 gram of gold, 2 barrels of oil pegged to 1 gram of gold, 3 barrels. I mean, they could absolutely take over the world economically. And I hate talking about it because it's brilliant and it's not us, right? I mean, and I think what they're doing is systematically destroying our way of life in America, and we're letting them do it.
So it's almost like, you know, the past, say, 100 years or, more than that, but since the Federal Reserve, since then, the 70s when we came off the gold standard, that the United States has really maintained its global leadership and control primarily through its money printing, right? That's how we've been able to fund wars across the Middle East. I mean, do all these, color revolutions all over, fund the military industrial complex. It's because we've actually been, the monopoly bank. We just keep printing. And it's actually funny because Elon Musk just shared this meme showing the monopoly bankrupt. It said, like, it was a kind of the instructions, like what happens when the bank runs out of money. It's like, oh, they just create new money, right? It was like, that's how it works. That's how the Federal Reserve works. So that we've maintained this control for a long time through that way. But what's happening now is that there's this shift going on where that's being destroyed, and now wealth is returning back to those who hold the assets. And so with the United States, like, assets, what are the assets? Well, oil obviously is a big asset of a nation. Gold is a huge asset as well. We know that our oil has been gutted, thanks to, President Biden. But the gold, are you aware, do you know how much gold the United States actually has? I know there's different rumors, and do we even know how much gold we have?
Nobody knows, Seth. This is the big problem. This is why going back decades, Ron Paul was trying to audit the Fed. Other politicians have tried to audit the Fed, all without avail. And even under the Freedom of Information Act, request, subpoena from Congress, just recently, like literally like a month ago, said, how many countries are repatriating their gold? We want to know. Well, they said, nope. I mean, literally, just nope. We're not telling you. It's like, what? What do you mean they're not telling us? Well, they're unauditable. So nobody really knows. Is there gold in Fort Knox? Is there even a Fort Knox? Is it held in the basement of the New York Fed? Is it not? If we do have on paper, on the ledger, that we're storing metals for Germany and Japan and all these other countries, do we still have it? Or has it been oversold to other countries and releasing it out? Nobody knows these answers. My guess, just a guess, knowing how the Fed operates, we don't have it. Or we have less than what people think because they're going to profit from holding other people's stuff. The reason I say that was because about 15 years ago, Angela Merkel, basically leader of Germany at the time, wanted all of the gold rehypothecated. She wanted to bring it back to the homeland. And so the Fed said, sorry, we don't actually have it. We'll give it to you in 7 years. It's like 7 years. It's like if that were my money and I were a nuclear power, right? Like Germany, I'd said, I want our money now, right? It's like you were just holding it. You're not supposed to use it. But this is the kind of nonsense that goes on, which is why I don't think that we have as much as people think that we have, or even have any at all.
Interesting perspective. And that is key, because if you look at what's happening with China, Russia, India, the BRICS nations, you see them scooping up gold and silver like mad. Whereas you have the United States, which you would make sense, right? If it was under Trump right now, I'd imagine that he'd be buying gold. He's smart. He'd be saving our oil. He'd be drilling our nation. He knows that this is how you fight a war, economic war. But the opposite is happening. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. So if folks want to, in their own micro scale, do what BRICS are doing, and they want to start amassing their own private vaults of gold and silver, it's what you do. We've got a website people can go to fill out a form, goldwithseth.com. They can also call you if they want to do that. What's the phone number best to reach your team, Kirk?
720 605 3900. That's 720 605 3900. Just say Seth sent you, or go to goldwithseth.com. Brings you to the same place. Fill out a form. We'll get scheduled with one of our consultants, and we can actually answer any questions that you have to get you safely allocated away from some of this nonsense that we're talking about.
Great. Well, Kirk, thank you. It's always great having you on. I appreciate it. Take care and God bless.
My pleasure. God bless.